I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus and Bowling Green. And hello to all our wonderful listeners on the internet, wherever and whenever you may be. I'm your friend and host, Shebaz Khan, I'm here with my fantastic co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
and you are the lucky ones who have tuned into For a Green Future and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, and happiness, and the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and families. And the eagles and the bears and the fish and the algae and all those cool living things that in turn keep us alive. Because, like it or not, we are all dependent on each other on this tiny little speck of planet we call Earth. We have a great show lined up for you today. For the next 10 minutes or so, we will be talking about various things. Then we have a rather unusual and interesting interview. Unusual because usually we are interviewing ecologists, scientists, activists, or park rangers. Today we are going to be interviewing a German teacher at the Bowling Green State University, Dr. Kristie Foell. We are going to talk to her about the new proposed law, SB83. This law, SB83, threatens the very foundations of teaching students about science in the first place. The law actually threatens all of Ohio's higher education institutions, but we will talk about that a little more about that in a little while. Then at the bottom of the hour, we'll hear from our wonderful patrons and sponsors, without whom we could not bring you this show. After that, we will be learning from Rebecca. Rebecca, what are you going to talk to us about today?
Colorado River, looking a
Wow.
little dry.
Wow, that sounds great. Let's see how this, what information and enlightenment you'll bring to us this week. Finally, we will have our ecological news section from all around the world. And sometime during the hour, we would like to hear from you. This is a call-in show, and it gets better every time you call in. So call us at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. So it appears that spring is finally irreversible, and the threat of frost may finally be done. So people are getting serious about their gardens. For many people, the garden is their closest connection with nature. If you compost, the garden is the ultimate destination for the nutrients you have salvaged from the waste food. By using your compost in your garden, you are mimicking a little bit, but you are mimicking the nutrient cycles that exist in nature. In nature, the dying and decomposition of the organisms that came before are absolutely essential for the health and growth of the living beings that exist, and maybe also that those exist in future. Apart from a few pioneer species like algae and the lichen, which can literally colonize bare rocks, the buildup of soil and nutrients over many years, sometimes centuries, are necessary for more complicated plants and then animals to survive in that area. There is a saying, despite all our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. Turns out that was originally attributed to the Farm Equipment Association of Minnesota and South Dakota. The thing is, you can actually date the creation of that saying by the depth of the topsoil in it. When the Europeans first arrived at the prairie, the topsoil was 16 inches deep. It was incredibly fertile, built up over a period of about 10,000 years since the end of the Ice Age. By the time the Farm Equipment Association came up with the saying in the early 1970s, the soil had eroded down to 6 inches. Now, in about half the prairie, true topsoil, that dark, rich, fertile soil that nourishes plants and the people who eat those plants is completely gone. What's left is subsoil that's nutrient poor, harder to plow, and requires tons of fertilizer. Also, all of that beautiful dark soil that didn't wash down into the ocean literally evaporated into the thin air, adding tons of carbon to our already CO2 poisoned atmosphere. That's the bad news. But we have a good news as well. The good news is that with organic farming, we can reverse that process, putting carbon and other nutrients back into the soil with regenerative farming techniques. These techniques can build the soil back up again, trapping carbon and providing a host of other benefits like drought resistance and food crops with higher nutritional values and better taste. Organic farming depends on putting carbon back into the soil through compost and cover crops and manure. Halfway between organic farming and the strip mine type of farming that has eliminated our topsoil all over the continent is no-till. No-till sequesters carbon because the soil is never plowed up, never exposed to the wind and sun that cause it to blow away. The problem with no-till is that before planting, all the plants growing in the fields must be killed so that they don't compete with the food crops. Since these plants aren't turned under, they are killed with herbicides. This requires even more chemicals than traditional farming. And in addition to the weeds, the herbicides kill beneficial organisms in the soil. So carbon is trapped. But no-till is not as beneficial to the environment as organic farming. You can demonstrate this. Yourself, you can try it and in your own garden at home. It is simply incredible how quickly a plot of land that has been killed, taken down to nearly lifeless subsoil, can again become deep, rich soil full of humus. Sometimes all it takes is to cover a plot with leaves in the fall, mix in some nitrogen in the form of composted manure, and in the spring you'll have a rich soil suitable for planting. If you continue this cycle year after year and plant crops that help put nutrients back into the soil like beans, and not just crops that take nutrients out like corn, that topsoil will get thicker and thicker. And over the course of years, you can again recreate the 16-inch deep layer of beautiful, dark, nutritious soil that once covered our entire continent. There are few things more satisfying than turning that deep, fragrant, dark soil that you know was previously a beach, nearly lifeless, sandy dirt that grew next to nothing. In addition to being pleasurable, exposure to soil is actually physically good for you. Not surprisingly, There is the benefit of the exercise of gardening. Studies have shown that time in garden is actually more beneficial in terms of your health and prevention of osteoporosis than working out the same amount of time in the gym. But last year's studies found that exposure to dirt through gardening actually exposes people to specific soil microbes that make you healthier. People who garden have lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol in their bloodstreams. They feel happier and less depressed than people who don't garden. It appears that exposure to the microbes in dirt may stimulate the body's immune system, and that somehow increases the amount of serotonin released into the body. Serotonin is called the happy molecule because it does improve mood and helps with brain functions. If you grow vegetables organically, you will find that birds and butterflies are attracted to your garden. The birds will eat the bugs that are trying to eat your plants. It may be simply be the insects feeding on the plants that have never been sprayed with chemicals. Simply taste better. The way organic produce often tastes better than produce grown with pesticides and herbicides. So get out into the garden, play in the dirt, build up your topsoil, and you'll get a feeling for what the green future where we restore Earth's lost fertility will be like. Teaching, the other option, has often been compared to gardening. Teaching a room full of students is in many ways like raising a garden. A teacher, you try to fertilize. As a teacher, you try to fertilize your students' minds with critical thinking, enrich the soil of your classroom with stimulating ideas and information. And just as in a garden, you can't predict which tiny little seedlings are going to turn out to yield the best crops. You never really know how students are going to turn out. However, the state of Ohio has decided to meddle with the classroom gardens all over the state. SB83, this new law, essentially dictates what professors can and can't teach and how they have to teach it. SB83 creates watchdog panels that are supposed to watch over professors and punish them if they teach in ways that the state does not approve. Teachers can lose their jobs if they simply teach the students the facts and don't also teach the falsehoods of the state of Ohio says they must. But let our guest give you more details about this. Josh, let's go ahead and start the interview.
My name is Kristie Foell. I am an associate professor at Bowling Green State University, where I teach German language and culture and also international studies. Okay. And I'll say right at the outset, I am a member of the BGSU FA, which is our chapter of the AAUP, the University Union. I'm not an officer in the union, and I don't speak for the union. So if we talk about matters touching on the union, I am just speaking as a rank and file member.
Right. And you're not speaking for the college either.
Absolutely not. This is me as an individual professor and person with 30 years of teaching experience in higher education. Right.
Just give us a quick rundown of what it is and some of the reasons you oppose it.
Sure, absolutely. I think just last week, BGSU's Faculty Senate passed a resolution opposing the bill because many of its provisions conflict with our charter, they conflict with our collective bargaining agreement, and so the faculty of the institution is on record. Probably not every individual faculty member, but the majority of our representative body is opposed to the bill for, as you said, a number of reasons. One is that this bill includes a provision that would prohibit university faculty from striking. So that is something that essentially guts the whole purpose of having a union. But I think the real issue, not that that isn't important, that's very important. But the central issue for most of us is academic freedom and excessive meddling and oversight in the content of what we teach, both at the macro level and at the very micro level. You know, you and I were talking beforehand about some of the wording in the proposal that no sane person would disagree with. For example, now I'm quoting from the proposed bill, the institution affirms that its duty is to equip students with the intellectual skills they need to reach their own informed conclusions on matters of social and political importance. That's a statement I think any faculty member I know would agree with, which raises the question, well, why do legislators think they need to pass legislation to sort of force us to do what we're already doing? And among the provisions in the bill are, first of all, a list of controversial topics that includes things like climate change, which I know we will want to talk about, but also gender, foreign policy, racial issues, and on this whole laundry list of controversial topics, we are supposed to never tell students what to think. Now, I don't believe that most faculty do tell students what to think on any of these issues. But the question is, when you take certain well-known facts, such as sea levels are rising, Bangladesh is flooding, would I, if this bill passes, no longer be able to state facts as facts? That's a matter of real concern to me. And another way in which the bill proposes to essentially commission the public as watchdogs is a requirement that every faculty syllabus must be posted on the university's homepage in great detail. That concerns me for a number of reasons. People probably don't know that faculty are already required to submit syllabi to the department for lots of good reasons, but also that we have in recent years gotten away from the practice of handing out a paper syllabus. In fact, at BGSU, we're no longer allowed to hand out a paper syllabus because of the costs and environmental impact of that. Our syllabi are posted on Canvas, which is our learning management system. And most of our day-to-day assignments are posted on Canvas. Therefore, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here, but let's just say this. The requirement to post a syllabus with details of everything that's going to be covered during the semester is a duplication of effort that we're already doing on the learning management system. And it creates a lot of potential for confusion. And of course, there is the question of whether John Q. Public really should be in the position of evaluating what's being taught in organic chemistry, or let's say in my intro to international studies or my post-war Germany class, what's really the purpose of this?
You mentioned that even though you teach German and international studies, environmental issues like global warming come up in those.
Absolutely. In international studies, all of us who teach that intro class are agreed that we devote a full unit to the environment. And I also teach a class on global migration. And an issue that's getting very big in global migration is the question of climate refugees. I mentioned Bangladesh. I'm sure you're well aware that Bangladesh has an increasing problem with flooding, which is very clearly due to sea rise. I need to be able to talk about that. And I need to be able to talk in my German class. A really central issue that we talk about is Germany's move away from nuclear energy. Beginning in the 60s, when, and especially the 70s, right? The 70s, as you know, was when nuclear energy became really big, both as an alternative to oil, thanks to the oil embargo of 73, and also, interestingly enough, from a climate perspective, right? The claim was made that nuclear energy is clean energy. Now, I have to say that when I am teaching on this topic, I do not tell students what to think. And I absolutely acknowledge that if what we're looking at is emissions and air quality, then yes, you could rationally claim that nuclear energy is clean. For the air, right? When we pursue it further, of course, it's not by any means an environmentally safe or neutral form of power. And so what's interesting, and what I like to talk to students about, is the difference in how Germans and Americans received that initial push for nuclear energy, right? Americans, we essentially bought the bill of goods. We decided, oh, this is great. And I mean, I remember in the 70s, the town I lived in had serious problems of air pollution, all kinds of dust settling on windowsills. And so in that environment, nuclear sounded great. In the German environment, with, higher population density, no obvious place to send spent plutonium rods, and a number of other issues. The National Green Party, in particular, mounted a very, very effective popular movement that stopped 3/4 of the proposed plants from ever being built in Germany. And so it's a really fascinating issue to discuss why, given the populations of both of these countries theoretically had access to the same facts about nuclear energy, why did one country simply accept this, while the other country mounted an anti-nuclear movement that led, of course, ultimately to the success of the Green Party and to the decommissioning of all nuclear energy in Germany, as you're well aware, just last month. I would like to be able to talk about this.
We celebrated that, yeah. So I think what you just did was you gave us a little example of essentially how you teach your students. You presented both sides already, and you didn't tell us which side to pick. Of course, here on For a Green Future, we just go ahead and say, pick the anti-nuclear side, because that's right.
Oh, absolutely. And if the students ask me, I tell them where I stand.
Yeah,
but I would never, for example, have a test question in which the students need to parrot my view. The test question would ask them, why did the Germans oppose nuclear energy? And there are a lot of things that go into that beyond, environmental concerns are central, but there were also in Germany fears about a resurgence of the totalitarian state. The fear was, Robert Jung was the thinker, maybe you've come across him. Jung spelled Jungk. He has a number of think tanks named after him in Germany. And he put forth the notion in Germany that if they were to have nuclear power, given the danger of the materials there, the plants would have to be so heavily guarded that you would end up with a totalitarian state. Now, he turned out to be wrong. Even in Germany, there never was any sort of totalitarian state guarding their plants. But that was the type of discourse that went on in Germany that could go some way towards explaining why did the Germans oppose it so strongly when we didn't.
Mhm.
And
Well,
yes.
Well, I do just want to point out that most of the U.S. Proposed nuke plants also weren't built. I mean, after 3 Mile Island, there was a huge. Nixon literally wanted 10,000 nuclear power plants, and we only got to 100. But I think that was valuable because I think part of what's going on here is that these politicians are playing on the fears of people who haven't been to college, who simply accept the idea that what professors do is essentially brainwash, dictate,
And indoctrinate.
force
Yes.
people, indoctrinate, force people into molds. Yeah. What do you think this does to the whole concept of truth? I mean, the idea that the state is going to now essentially kind of tell us what the truth is, or tell you professors, what the truth is supposed to be, or how you're supposed to teach.
Yes, I think one of the very legitimate fears of faculty is that we walk into a false kind of both sides-ism. And particularly when you take look at something like climate change, there really aren't, I'll pick another topic for a moment. If we look at a real hot button issue like the topic of abortion, that is an issue where there truly are two sides, roughly equal, with, I don't even want to say opposite viewpoints, because there's a lot of nuance in the middle as well, right? You have those people who want to forbid any interference in a pregnancy from the moment of conception. And on the other side, you have people who say, we really don't want the government involved in medical decisions. That's an issue where, honestly, it's quite important to me to actually have both sides of this debate. But I do teach this in a cross-cultural perspective also. And, when you look at the original Roe decision, that Supreme Court decision, the justices explicitly stated, and I won't have it word for word, but it went something like, given that moral philosophers, clergy, and medical professionals can't agree on when life begins, we are not about to wade into that, and we're offering no opinion on when life begins, but simply on the right of individuals to make reproductive decisions. The German approach is very different. Actually, I think they do say that human life begins at implantation, which is just slightly, maybe 3 to 5 days later than fertilization. So they do have an opinion on it. They say that the government has an interest in protecting human life, but reality being what it is, we are not going to punish or prosecute any woman who obtains an abortion within certain limitations that I don't need to go into. That is an issue where I think that because of real philosophical and religious concerns about the value of human life, disagreement about when it begins, and then on the other side, real concerns about how women can live our lives in equality and freedom, I think you need to have both sides of that debate in any responsible classroom. When we look at something like climate change, it's very, very different, because here we basically have established science, as you know better than I do, that is agreed upon by something like 97% of the scientific community. The 3 or so percent who disagree have to a large extent had their research funded by oil companies or, by other interests who simply don't want anthropogenic or, human created climate change to be a fact. So this is an issue where any kind of both sidesism ends up distorting the reality. You can't disagree. And someone will quote me on that, right? They'll say, oh, I heard a professor say you can't disagree. But no rational human looking at the evidence of yearly temperatures, of ocean levels, of ocean temperatures would disagree with the fact that the climate is changing. So when I look at this proposal for SB83 and it lists climate change as a controversial topic, no, it's not. It's not actually controversial in the sense of the scientific community having any real disagreement about it.
Thank you very much. We're just about out of time here, but it definitely sounds like one of the points you're trying to make here is that if you teach both sidisms on a topic which is factually one way or the other,
Yes.
You're actually hurting your students rather than
absolutely. You're
educating
distorting the truth, and you are you end up doing what the authors of this bill fear. You end up indoctrinating students to what are the party in power apparently would like people to believe. And I would prefer to be free to teach facts. And then, the fact that one teaches that climate change is real does not necessarily imply that there is only one way to respond to it. And when I talk about this fact in international studies, we talk about a lot of different ways of responding. One would be population. Is population growth or population shrinkage, which apparently we're headed for, does that solve it? I tend to think no, not automatically. Along with the population decline, you need a new attitude towards consumerism. We need conversations about the economy. So in other words, agreeing that climate change is real does not mean that everybody has to embrace the liberal agenda.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Kristie Foell. That was our interview with a very educative and informative interview with Dr. Kristie Foell. We are so very much thankful to her, and I really felt excited and enthusiastic when I was, doing this interview along with because I also belong to BGSU. I am also a student with BGSU, and I feel so confident that I'm enrolled in the correct institution. We are also grateful and highly grateful, in fact, to our sponsors. Let's hear from them now.
The Ecofill shop is located at 115 West Mary in Bowling Green, Ohio. They sell lots of different things: cosmetics, bath and body, home and garden, cleaning, towels, knickknacks, candles, fragrances, and more. They sell all of these things without plastic containers. The whole purpose of the Ecofill shop is to eliminate plastic. Customers love them. Summer says, "I'm loving the products they offer. It's sensible and affordable, all while being eco-friendly and plant-based, eliminating the unnecessary use of chemicals." That's just one of the glowing testimonials you'll see at their website, ecofillshops.com. Corinne says one of her favorite products is the dish soap. She can't believe how easy the stains come out. If you're interested, give them a call at 419-944-8862 and talk to the owner, Josie, who's very passionate about environmental issues. Or you can check out their website, ecofillshop.com. Or, best yet, you can drop in at 115 West Mary in Bowling Green. That's the Ecofill shop. For a Green Future is also brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They also restore wildlife habitats and lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. There are several ways to get a hold of them and find out what's happening. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. Another is to visit their website, www.wcparks.org. The website again is www.wcparks.org. They are also available on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and many others. Just search for WC Parks. That's the Wood County Park District, and we're very grateful for their support.
In addition to our sponsors, we are also highly grateful to our Patreons. Patreons are the supporters who went to the patreon.com website, that is patreon.com, and they searched for a green future. And on our incredible patronage page, they chose a monthly budget level, patronage level that matched their monthly budget. You are also able to set your own patronage level so as you can give little or as much as you want each month. Now, a small, comfortable monthly donation comes from their account each month to our account. And that's how we are able to keep this show moving, and we can afford to keep For a Green Future on the air. And one of the things we do with our airtime is give Rebecca the platform to talk to us with interesting and informative topic each week. So what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about the Colorado River, which is having some serious problems. There was an article that was sent in by an alert reader from ABC News from April 19th, 2023. Says the water levels in the Colorado River have dipped alarmingly despite having a record wet winter. Probably because it's in like a 20-year drought and one wet winter, or even a bunch of them cannot really make up for that. The nonprofit American Rivers calls the Colorado the most endangered river in the world. Supplies drinking water for 40 million people in the U.S. and Mexico, according to the Bureau of Reclamation. I didn't know there was a Bureau of Reclamation. I had to find more about that. And it also provides hydropower in 8 states and is a critical resource for 30 tribal nations and agricultural communities. I'm not sure what they mean by agricultural communities. Is that like a literal town where they do agriculture, or is it sort of a community in the sense of the avocado growing community or something? I'm not sure about that. Anyway, it sounds kind of important, you know. Apparently the Colorado River supports $1.4 trillion of the economy every year and 16 million jobs, which represents 1/12 of the U.S. domestic product, according to economists at the University of Arizona, who said this in 2015. 90% of the U.S. winter leafy greens are grown in the Yuma area, apparently, which is a lot. I never knew it. Like just Yuma, there must be nothing but greens there. There probably is. Sorry, Yuma. Anyway, yeah, the drastic water cuts are imminent under the current regulations in response to this situation. So stuff is going to get real soon near the Colorado River.
Yeah.
The Lake Mead Reservoir, apparently, which is important for both water and producing power, was close to dead pool status in June of 2021. And that means that the waters are too low to generate power, is apparently what it means. And it may be reaching dead pool status this decade, they're saying, probably, with all that's going to take is like 5 or 6 dry winters. So we have 5 out of 10 half dry winters, we're going to be in trouble. Risk scientist Zach Zobel of the Woodwell Climate Research Center is is the one who believes this, probably other people as well. So yeah, it's also going to affect the semiconductor industry in Phoenix, which is $1 billion industry with tens of thousands of jobs. Electric water bills will skyrocket, and the American West is in a 20-year drought. For every 1 degree of Celsius temperature rise, the water level has dipped. Flow has dipped 9.3%, and the U.S. Geological Survey says that the waters are over allocated. And apparently, like, this would be happening even without, just because of climate change, because there's so many people moving to Arizona. Even if the river stayed the same, they'd be in trouble. So, yeah, bad stuff with the Colorado River.
Wow, that's alarming.
Yep.
Yeah, but thank you very much, Rebecca. I mean, you bring in such informative and interesting information from around the world and from ecology. That's really
A little
interesting.
random, but anywhere you look, you're going to see an ecological story these days. There's so much bad stuff going on. Unfortunately, I wish it was harder to find ecological stories.
But either ways, I mean, what I think is these are all interconnected. We need
Very
to
much so, yeah.
just look at it. So that this brings us to the final session of the show. That is, let's quickly get on to the ecological news. First news story is on Nova on reducing carbon. This past week, the public television documentary Nova had a program called Chasing Carbon Zero. It was an interesting episode. It followed the adventures of a reporter who drove around the country in a Ford Lightning electric pickup truck, talking to people involved in trying to eliminate carbon. It was an interesting and engaging program. It was especially interesting to see the program report on a problem we have been reporting on for years now. The problems of electric car charger infrastructure. Anyone with an electric vehicle has experienced the frustration they showed of driving around, trying to find a charger that both worked and had the same charging plug that your car uses. One especially interesting energy storage technology they looked at was the iron air battery. They talked with the researchers who had developed batteries that would capture electrons from the iron as it rusted, and which could then be returned as by adding new electrons that derusted the iron. It has very high energy density, doesn't require exotic metals, and can be charged, discharged, and recharged forever. They also gave a nod to offshore wind power and solar, which was nice, but most of the technologies they looked at were just over the horizon. Unfortunately, they also had quoted an expert. They also had a quote expert unquote who insisted that nuclear power was part of a team of energy sources, and that we needed all those energy sources to make it into the future. They didn't give any time to the many experts like Dr. Mark Jacobson from Stanford, who have clearly mapped out a path to zero carbon with nuclear. Nuclear power is like the teammate who keeps throwing the ball in the wrong direction, tackling his own teammates, but who still gets paid the highest salary. Teams that want to win have to cut members like that. It was a chilling echo of Obama's all of the above energy strategy, which squandered his chance to really promote truly carbon free energy like wind and solar. They also wasted a lot of time looking at technology to capture methane being vented into the atmosphere by oil wells. While it's true that this is a terrible problem, the solution is to stop drilling for oil, not to outfit the wells with fancy gizmos to burn the methane more efficiently. Still, if you can get past those glaring flaws, the rest of the show was fun to watch and upbeat and optimistic, which is the attitude we are going to need if we want to actually catch the zero carbon future we are all chasing. Moving on to the second story. The second story is from Georgia. Georgia Power ready to fleece ratepayers for volatile nuke plants. There has been development in the story of Vogtle nuclear plants. Those two plants, Unit 3 and 4, are over 7 years behind the schedule and approaching triple the originally estimated costs. It looks like after a decade of construction, Unit 3 might finally be ready to go online. Although every time it has tried so far, something has gone wrong and the start date had to be pushed back several months again. The question which reported on in April 28th article on the website Energy Intelligence is how much of the final construction bill will Georgia Power be allowed to stick to its electricity customers. The original construction was supposed to cost only $14 billion. It looks like the final cost will be over $35 billion. For the past decade, thanks to a corrupt scheme, Georgia ratepayers have already been paying the financing costs on their electricity bill, even though they were not getting any electricity in return. The average Georgian has already paid about $1,000. Now that the plants may actually become operational, the utility companies are free to stick customers for the rest. Electric bills could increase as much as $50 per month if both Georgia Power and Southern Company get approved for the maximum reimbursement. The wild card is that the rate increases have to be approved by the Georgia's Public Service Commission, PSC. Up until now, the PSC has been reliable lapdog for the utility companies, approving every requested rate increase and supporting the construction of the nuclear plants, no matter how much the costs overran or how long it was taking. However, the PSC members are elected, not appointed, and there are two candidates who oppose the new plans who have fought incredible legal battles to get onto the ballot to challenge the old boy network of corrupt nuclear proponents. They are bringing attention to this financial fiasco, and it is becoming politically more difficult for the members to simply use their rubber stamp. The rate increases would, by law, have to be declared prudent. Unfortunately, the elections for new PSC members have been delayed, while the terms of some of the old members actually expired in December. They have stayed on because a judge decided that the districts drawn up for the PSC board members were gerrymandered to keep poorer minority ratepayers from having any representation. This delay may allow outgoing PSC to approve the rate increases before the election to replace them is even held. While it may seem to be obvious to most people that continuing to throw money down a hole for a decade to install the most expensive source of energy available in the world today is not prudent, we will have to watch what they decide in Georgia. Moving on to the third news, New York State bans new gas buildings. That's a good news. From the New York State, Canary Media reports in a May 3rd article that New York State has banned fossil fuel use in new construction. Starting in 2026, buildings under 7 stories can't use natural gas or any other fossil fuel for furnaces, stoves, or water heaters. Buildings larger than 7 stories have to start complying in 2029. It's called All Electric Building Act. The Natural Resources Defense Council calls it an historic step forward. There have been over 100 similar laws approved by local municipal governments, like Berkeley, California, for example, had a similar law on the books, but fossil fuel interests have been challenging those local bans in court and having them overturned. A statewide ban is expected to be more effective. The ban does not apply to existing buildings. Originally, the start date was supposed to be 2024, not 2026, but Governor Kathy Hochul bowed to lobbying pressure by the fossil fuel industry and pushed it back. There are also a number of exemptions in the bill. Manufactured homes, industrial installations, car washes, crematoriums, restaurants, and other commercial establishments are exempt. Still, the bill is the result of the years of effort by climate activists in New York State and represents the first state government to use state law to, to ban the use of natural gas, which currently accounts for 1/3 of New York State's greenhouse gas emissions. Coming on to the fourth news, shading crops with solar panel improves farming. On April 26th, the website, the Conversation published an article entitled How Shading Crops with Solar Panels Can Improve Farming, Lower Food Costs, and Reduce Emissions. It turns out that agrivoltaics growing crops under solar panel is much more profitable than just using farmland to grow crops alone. Corn, lettuce, potatoes, tomatoes, wheat, and hay have all been proven to do better growing under solar panels. The solar panels create microclimates underneath themselves. These areas conserve moisture and protect the plants from weather like hail and wind. It also prevents erosion and protects the plants from harmful direct sunlight during heat waves. The panels are typically mounted on frames that are higher than the other kinds of solar installations, and there are gaps between the panels that let some light through. They are mounted high enough to allow workers and some machinery to operate under them. Agrivoltaics essentially allows the farmers to harvest two crops, one from the field and two crops from one field. It allows farmers to harvest two crops from one field, both food and energy. Yeah, that's a nice advantage. One of the most common forms of agrivoltaics is using grazing sheep under solar panels. The sheep keeps grass and weeds from growing tall enough to shade the panels, and they use the panels as shade when it gets hot. Such kind of farms also emit less greenhouse gases than traditional farms. Healthier plants require less attention and fewer passes with farm machinery. A life cycle study has shown that farms with solar panels emit about 70% less greenhouse gases and use 85% less fossil fuel. Opening farm fields to solar energy production could solve the land use problem. It's estimated that if just 4% of Canadian farm fields converted to agrivoltaics, it could meet 100% of Canada's electricity needs. Now coming to the last story, Tories get thumped. Britain has just held its local elections, and the ruling party, the Tories, were soundly thumped, losing 1,000 seats, while the Green Party picked up a record of 241 seats. The Labour Party also picked up seats. These are the elections to local councils, roughly equivalent to municipal and county governments in the US. Parliamentary elections are this fall. There are a number of reasons Britons are unhappy with the Tories, including stagflation and disapproval plans to dismantle the public healthcare system. But environmental issues also played a large role. In Suffolk, Greens actually took control of the council for the first time. One of their major issues was opposition to the proposed Sizewell C nuclear power plant. The Tory government has repeatedly committed to building this plant, even though it would mean destroying one of the most important wetlands in Britain. And even though studies have shown that there isn't a sufficient local source for the cooling water, not enough private investments have stepped forward to finance it. And its location is on a highly erodible seashore, and it is predicted to be underwater in less than 25 years. As we have reported, the project was actually rejected by the agency in the British government, which is responsible for measuring the economic prudence of new developments. But that rejection was directly overruled by Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. The vote in Suffolk was widely viewed as a referendum on nuclear power, and the nukes went down hard. Well, that was our show for this week. I sincerely thank you, all of you, for listening. As always, we ask you to please send your comments and suggestions to joe@joedemaire for a greenfuture.org, or check out our Facebook pages. We hope you have enjoyed this discussion, this interview. I know we have spent almost an hour. Before signing off, Rebecca, would you like to say a few last words before we
I
close?
guess so. Nice talking to you all, and see you next week.
Thank you very much, dear listeners. Keep listening and start working for a green future. Log into our Patreon page and
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!